Good morning. I apologize to the Chairman of Senate Armed Services if my gavel is a little vigorous. I think I startled Roger awake this morning. The Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation will come to order. Today we'll consider a Coast Guard promotion, 2 consequential nominations, and 16 bills. Let me begin with Jared Isaacman, the President's nominee for NASA Administrator. Mr. Isaacman is a successful entrepreneur with a bold, boundary-pushing vision for space exploration. As we heard at his nomination hearing earlier this month, quote, NASA was built to do the near impossible. I agree. But NASA's plans for space must remain grounded in reality and align with our strategic interests. Existing law directs NASA to establish a, quote, sustained human presence in cislunar space or on the moon. Federal law explicitly calls the moon a, quote, stepping stone to reaching Mars. In other words, our path to predominance in space begins with the Artemis missions. Mr. Isaacman acknowledges this. As he told us, quote, I'm committed to following the law, and as a lifelong space enthusiast, I would like nothing more than to see lunar operations become continuous, enduring, and routine. For Isaacman, NASA can pursue Martian objectives. Yes, absolutely. But these should, quote, not detract from the near-term objective of returning to the moon first. Given this explicit commitment, I support Mr. Isaacman's confirmation. I also support the confirmation of Olivia Trusty to the Federal Communication Commission, the FCC. A former staffer for Senator Wicker on this committee, Ms. Trusty is an expert in telecommunications policy and someone who understands the need for a spectrum pipeline to free up bands for commercial use. I look forward to working with her and with Chairman Carr as we restore the FCC's commercial auction authority this Congress. Let me highlight a few of the bills we're taking up today. The Sunshine Protection Act, led by Senator Scott of Florida, is bipartisan legislation to end the disruptive practice of switching our clocks twice a year. As we heard at a hearing earlier this month, a shift to either permanent daylight savings time or permanent standard time, if a state chooses to adopt that instead, would boost economic activity and improve public health. We will also shine sunlight on the activities of our competitors and our adversaries. The Fighting Foreign Illegal Seafood Harvest, or FISH Act, from Senator Sullivan, would crack down on illegal fishing in the United States waters by Russia and others. The United States Research Protection Act, introduced by my fellow Texans, Senator Cornyn and Senator Curtis, will safeguard taxpayer-funded research from exploitation by adversarial nations. Senator Peters' Combating CCP Labor Abuses Act, introduced with Senators Lummis and Curtis, will keep the Commerce Department employees informed about the human rights abuses of the Chinese Communist Party, including those perpetrated against the Uyghur population. And in keeping with our efforts to stay ahead of global competitors, I want to recognize Senators Moreno and Blunt-Rochester for their Deploying American Blockchains Act, which will direct the Commerce Department to support continued U.S. leadership in distributed ledger technology. We should shine a light on the workings of our own government, too. My bill with Senator Duckworth, the Comprehensive NASA Reporting Act, will require NASA to send congressionally mandated reports to authorizing committees. This legislation will help our own committee work more effectively with Mr. Isaacman, should he be confirmed. Other bills aim to protect citizens from environmental or emergency-related risks. Senator Klobuchar's and Blackburn's Enhancing First Response Act would improve emergency response by reclassifying emergency dispatchers as a protective service occupation and requiring FCC reports or hearings on disasters and 911 outages. Senator Schatz's Tame Extreme Weather and Wildfires Act, introduced with Senators Sheehy, Lujan, and Welch, would leverage the power of artificial intelligence for weather and wildfires forecasting. And Lulu's Law, from Senators Britt, Schatz, Fisher, and Capito, would alert beachgoers of a potential shark attack. And the Fog Observation and Geographic Forecasting Act would require the National Weather Service to improve fog forecasting with the goals of increasing vessel safety, helping the shipping industry, and keeping commerce flowing in and out of U.S. ports. All told, the nominations and bills we're voting on today represent a bipartisan vision for a secure, competitive, and safe America. I call upon my colleagues to join me in supporting them. Now turn to Ranking Member Cantwell for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee meets today, as you mentioned, to consider two big nominations and a promotion of Coast Guard officers and 17 bills to improve public safety, promote blockchain technology, protect our nation against malign actors, and better protect consumers from fraud, improve weather forecasting, and conserve the environment. As we continue to work through these issues, I want to thank my colleagues. Today we will consider the Sunshine Act from Senator Scott, Markey, Lummis, Blackburn, and Schatz. This legislation would end the practice of observing a temporary daylight savings time. While I know there are strong opinions on this issue, whether daylight saving time or standard time, in the state of Washington, we have adopted a daylight savings time if this law would be permitted, would go into effect. So I am supporting this legislation today out of committee, but I do think there are still some issues, as the chairman and other members and I were talking here. And just as we've advanced this bill in the past, I expect that there will be some continued work on this policy. We also consider enhancing First Response Act by Senator Klobuchar, Blackburn, Lujan, Sullivan, Capito, Markey, Budd, and Thune, which I also co-sponsor. Very important legislation offered by my colleague, Senator Klobuchar, that finally recognizes the life-saving work of 911 operators by reclassifying them as first responders. I thank Senator Klobuchar for her work on this important issue. The state of Washington made this change permanent in 2022, so I'm happy to see that 911 operators across the country will also be recognized. We also have before us laws by Senators Britt, Schatz, Fisher, and Capito. This bill ensures beachgoers are better informed of risk by clarifying wireless emergency alerts. We are moving the National Earthquake Hazardous Reduction Program Reauthorization Act by Senator Padilla, very important policy for the Pacific Northwest as well as many parts of our country. This important legislation will help save lives and protect property. And today we're considering the Deploying American Blockchain Act of 2025 by Senators Moreno, Blunt, Rochester, and Sheehy, which passed out of this committee last year when it was intended to strengthen U.S. competitiveness. And we will consider the Ascend Act from Senator Hickenlooper, very important legislation, which gives NASA the authority to procure remote sensing data and imagery from commercial vendors. I think this is important policy that will help us grow an important data information in the public sector. The Foreign Adversary Communication Transparency Act by Senators Fisher, Rosan, Lujan, which would increase disclosure of entities that are owned and influenced by foreign adversaries. As the chairman mentioned, important security policy. This bill had bipartisan agreement last Congress, and so I'm supportive of it in this Congress. And as we have the United States Research Protection Act of 2025 from Senators Cornyn and Curtis, this proposal amends the CHIPS and Science Act to strengthen and clarify protection against malign foreign actors and their recruitment, including the countries of China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia. And we also have two bills before us that aim to improve weather forecasting. The first by Senator Cruz, improve forecast of coastal marine fog. Well, there is something that Washington and Texas agree on. And we have the Tame Extreme Weather Wildfires Act by Senators Schatz, Sheehy, and Lujan, which improves direction from NOAA to improve the accuracy and timeliness of weather, water, and space forecasting. And the main Event Ticketing Act by Senators Blackburn and Lujan, which would better protect consumers by strengthening the Bots Act of 2016, requiring the reporting on bots attacks on ticket sellers. So again, I think this is another attempt to try to help our consuming public afford very important venue events. I also appreciate the legislation by my colleague and myself being on the agenda, the Northwest Straits Conservation Initiative Reauthorization Act, enabling the Northwest Straits Commission to continue its vital work. Puget Sound and the Straits are one of the most busiest waterways in the nation, just happened to intersect with also some of the most beautiful habitat and species in the nation as well. So having the Straits Commission continue to do their work is very important. And a second bill related to healthy communities by Senator Kane and Warner would permit NASA to reimburse the towns in Virginia for direct costs directly associated with PFAS. I want to thank my colleagues, Senator Sullivan and Whitehouse, for introducing the FISH Act, which is intended to strengthen the federal government's role in reducing illegal fishing. And I want to thank them for accepting my amendment to reauthorize the Vital Sea Grant Program, which is part of this legislation today. I do remain concerned about putting more requirements upon the National Marine Fisheries Service at a time when the administration is proposing to cut their budget by 30%. This is an issue, Mr. Chairman, I hope that we'll have a committee hearing on and have discussion of, because I think this is critically important for many of our fishing communities around the U.S. that are managed by fisheries science policy. So if you want to have good fisheries management, you have to have the good science and can't have the budget cuts. We are considering also the Peters-Lummis-Curtis bill on China and combating labor abuses of 2025, which I appreciate. With regards to the Comprehensive NOAA Reporting Act from Senator Cruz and Duckworth, I wish we would apply the same issues that we are looking here from NASA for clarity so that we can do our oversight jobs for other agencies. I'm concerned that the committee, by not having the oversight, is literally taking the work of committee and letting the administration rearrange the deck chairs at a time when important issues are to be considered. So I will support this NASA bill today, but I think that we need to get on to other important work that this committee should be doing from an oversight role: aviation safety, AI and quantum issues, the Surface Transportation Act reauthorization, and one of my favorite issues is shipping, where I think that the President and others have agreement that we should be doing more on shipbuilding in the United States of America, so I hope we will get to that. On the nominations, I plan to support Ms. Trustee's nomination out of the committee today. I've had conversations with Leader Thune about our ability to continue to move FCC nominations, so I will continue to support her as long as we are going to continue to support both Democrat and Republican nominees. I believe that her testimony reflects her knowledge and experience on these important policy issues. I may not always agree with her, but as long as the leader plans to continue to move nominees of both sides, I will continue to support her nomination. And on the Isaacman nomination comes before us with a wealth of business experience and space experience. I do think that innovators at this point in time, with a commitment to keeping on to the moon mission, is the key requirement that we have to have in this position. While it's not clear to me where the Trump administration will ultimately end up on the NASA budget, and I have concerns about some of their proposed cuts today, Mr. Isaacman seems to be committed to the current plan for both lander redundancy, space launch systems, and returning to the moon as fast as possible. I think this is a very big competitive issue for the United States of America. That competitiveness is not just a goal, it's a reality that someday we may wake up and find ourselves falling behind. So today I will support his nomination and hope that we will continue to get leadership out of the administration on clarification of supporting a robust NASA budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I now recognize Senator Wicker for one day more. for a motion.
I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, I move that PN 24-6 and PN 24-7 nominations of Olivia Trustee to be a member of the Federal Communications Commission be favorably reported. And I note, Mr. Chairman, that the first PN completes the term expiring June 30 of 2025. The second PN is for a term of 5 years from July 1st, 2025. Thank you.
Is there a second? The clerk will call the roll for an en bloc vote for 2 nominations for Ms. Trustee.
Mr. Chairman, is there opportunity for us to make a comment?
Sure.
Yes, I wanted to as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know this is an en bloc vote, but I would have planned to vote yes on Ms. Trustee to serve on the FCC. I do believe she's well qualified for the role, but I am deeply concerned with this administration's threats to independent commissions like the FCC, as the president has illegally fired Democratic commissioners of the FTC. So while I'm supporting Ms. Trustee for this position today, I cannot commit to supporting her on the floor if there are not commitments from the White House that they will respect the independence of the FCC and that, as has been precedent, this nomination is paired with a Democratic nominee on the floor. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Klobuchar.
I join Ms. Rosen. I support advancing her nomination because of her experience and work, but I do not believe she will have my vote on the floor if we have not advanced a Democratic nominee. Thank you.
Anyone else seeking to be recognized? Then the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Thune. Mr. Wicker. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Moran. Mr. Sullivan. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Young. Mr. Budd. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Curtis. Mr. Moreno. Mr. Sheehy. Mrs. Capito. Ms. Lummis. Ms. Cantwell. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Markey. Mr. Peters.
No.
Ms. Baldwin.
Aye by proxy.
Ms. Duckworth.
No.
Ms. Rosen. Mr. Lujan.
No.
Mr. Hickenlooper.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Fetterman.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Kim.
No by proxy.
Ms. Blunt Rochester.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
Aye.
The ayes are 21, the noes are 7.
The motion is agreed to, and the nominations are ordered to be reported favorably. I now recognize Senator Moran for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I move PN 1223, nomination of Jared Isaacman to be the Administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration to be favorably reported.
Is there a second? Does anyone wish to be recognized for discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Thune.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Wicker. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Moran. Mr. Sullivan. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Young. Mr. Budd. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Curtis.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Moreno. Mr. Sheehy. Mrs. Capito. Ms. Lummis. Ms. Cantwell.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar.
No.
Mr. Schatz. No. Mr. Markey.
No by proxy.
Mr. Peters. No. Ms. Baldwin.
Aye by proxy.
Ms. Duckworth.
No.
Ms. Rosen.
No.
Mr. Lujan. No. Mr. Hickenlooper.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Fetterman.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kim.
Aye by proxy.
Ms. Blunt Rochester.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
Aye.
The yeses are 19, the noes are 9.
The motion is agreed to, and the nomination is ordered to be reported favorably. I now recognize Senator Lummis for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that S-29, Sunshine Protection Act of 2025, as amended by Cruise 1, be favorably reported.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion?
I have an amendment.
Senator Young.
My amendment, Young 1, proposes making standard time permanent instead of the underlying bill's push for permanent daylight saving time. Indiana has a uniquely complex history with daylight savings time. Until 2006, most of our counties didn't observe it, while others did, leading to a widespread confusion and inconsistency across the state. Under permanent daylight savings time, as the underlying bill allows, sunrise in central Indiana would be delayed until after 9 a.m. during much of the winter months, forcing Hoosiers to start their day in darkness. Supported by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, moving to permanent standard time is widely recognized as the healthiest option for promoting better sleep, alertness, and overall well-being. For this reason, my amendment would also change the title of this bill to Make America Rested Again Act. After surveying constituents across Indiana in recent weeks, it's clear to me there's no single right way to approach the issue of time, and regional differences play an important factor in these decisions. But if there is consensus in Congress to lock the clock, I think it is at least worth further debate and detailed analysis of whether it would be better to lock the clock on standard time, as Indiana observed until 2006, or daylight savings time. Mr. Chairman?
Does Senator Young want to vote on this amendment?
Yes. I request a roll call vote. I'll withdraw the amendment after your persuasive ability.
World's greatest deliberative body.
Okay.
Thank you. I have to say, that's probably the best speech I've heard you deliver, Ted.
I can't disagree. And I will say this. Look, I think Senator Young's points are heartfelt and they're serious. And my view, the hearing we had on this, there are times when you have a hearing on a bill and you're trying to move forward with the bill and you think there's a clear right answer. This is not one of those times. At least for me, the testimony we heard at the hearing was very interesting. It persuaded me that we should lock the clock, that the practice of changing, springing forward and falling back every year doesn't make sense, that it has real negative consequences, both in terms of safety, in terms of economic productivity, and so we should lock the clock. I think there were also serious arguments on both sides as to where to lock the clock. We heard serious arguments in favor of daylight savings times from golf courses and other entertainment venues, that having more daylight later in the day was beneficial. We heard serious testimony from physicians that having more daylight earlier in the day was beneficial. And I think reasonable people can differ. That's one reason why I added an amendment to this, Cruise 1, which delays the effective date of the act by 2 years. That is designed to give every state the ability to choose what's the right time to lock for your state. So if Indiana decides that standard time is the right time for Indiana, I think that's a perfectly reasonable decision for the people of Indiana to make. In Texas, the state legislature is considering legislation to have a referendum and have actually the voters of Texas decide whether Texas will be under standard time or daylight savings time. I think that's a very reasonable way to decide it as well. This bill does not purport to decide for every state in the union one way or the other, daylight savings time or standard time. Rather, it gives every state the ability to make that choice, and I think that's a reasonable decision. I hope in Texas we do see the referendum, because I'd like to see the voters decide it. But with that, I don't know if there's any further discussion. If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Thune,
No by proxy.
Mr. Wick,
We're voting on the final bill.
We're voting on the final bill, which incorporates my amendment. This is the final bill itself, and I'll say I recognized, I don't anticipate a partisan vote on this. I think there'll be a mixed vote reflecting the different views of various states. So Thune is no by proxy.
Mr. Wicker. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Moran. Mr. Sullivan. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Young. Mr. Budd. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Curtis.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Moreno. Mr. Sheehy. Mrs. Capito. Ms. Lummis. Ms. Cantwell.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Markey.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Peters. Ms. Baldwin.
Aye by proxy.
Ms. Duckworth. Ms. Rosen. Mr. Lujan. Mr. Hickenlooper.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Fetterman.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Kim.
Aye by proxy.
Ms. Blunt Rochester.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
Aye.
The yeses are 16, the noes are 12.
Well, an interesting vote and not a partisan vote, but the motion is agreed to. I now recognize Ranking Member Cantwell for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that S-196, the Main Event Act, as amended by Blackburn-Lujan substitute, S-259, the Foreign Adversary Communications Transparency Act, S-320, the National Earthquake Hazard Reduction Program Reauthorization Act of 2025, as amended by the Cruz substitute as modified, S-580, the Combating CCP Labor Abuses Act of 2025, S-606, Contaminated Wells Relocation Act, S-688, the Fish Act of 2025 as amended by Cantwell 1, S-725, Enhancing First Responder Act as amended by Klobuchar Blackburn substitute, S-769, United States Research Protection Act of 2025, S-1003, Lula's Law, S-1081, Comprehensive NASA Reporting Act of 2025 as amended by Cantwell 1 as modified, S-1278, Fog Observation Graphic Forecasting Act, S-1378, Tame Extreme Weather and Wildfires Act as amended by the SHOTS substitute as modified, S-1433, the Northwest Straits Marine Conservation Initiative Reauthorization Act as amended by the Cantwell substitute, as amended by Cruz 1, as amended by Cantwell 1 to Cruz 1, and S-1437, the Ascend Act as amended by Hickenlooper substitute, as modified, S-1492, Deploying American Blockchain Technology, Blockchains Act of 2025, be favorably reported.
That was easy for you to say. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Moran.
Mr. Chairman, I intend to oppose and vote no on S-1081, and I either need to be able to be recorded in this en blanc or have it withdrawn from the list of bills we're voting on.
Without objection, we will record you as voting no on the bill you specified.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion is agreed to, and the bills are ordered to be reported favorably. I now recognize Ranking Member Cantwell for another motion. It's number 10, the Coast Guard nomination. Before the bills. So we skip the Coast Guard.
Mr. Chairman, I move that PN 114, nomination of John Manzilio to be the Lieutenant Commander, be favorably reported.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is agreed to. I ask you,
Chairman,
Senator Cantwell.
I note that S29, the Sunshine Protection Act, we did not have a sufficient number of members present voting in favor to advance the measure. There are only currently 10 ayes present.
Understood, then we will address that at a later date when we have sufficient members present.
How many votes are required?
15 ayes physically present. So we'll move it to the next markup and hopefully have better attendance. I ask for unanimous consent that staff are authorized to make technical and conforming changes without objection, so ordered. That concludes today's votes. Are there any members of the committee wishing to make remarks? Senator Fisher.
Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding today's markup. I would like to speak on item 4, please. Earlier this year, I was proud to introduce S-259, the Foreign Adversary Communications Transparency Act. The FACT Act would provide essential transparency for communications services that are licensed or authorized for use within the United States. The Federal Communications Commission approves tens of thousands of equipment authorizations alone each year. These authorizations include network gear that support critical infrastructure in our energy, agriculture, health, or transportation sectors, and more. They also serve as a green light for the use of new wireless consumer devices that multiply by the day. Meanwhile, foreign adversaries like China continue to look for quiet footholds in these devices and in our networks. Until now, though, no law has required the disclosure of companies linked to foreign adversaries that are operating in the United States tech and telecom markets. My bill does this by directing the FCC to assess and identify the foreign ownership details of communications licenses and authorizations. Protecting our networks requires us to understand the threats and hold bad actors accountable. The FACT Act is a solution on both fronts by ensuring public awareness of these supply chain risks. I'm glad to have worked with Senators Rosen, Cornyn, and Lujan on this legislation. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that you and Ranking Member Cantwell have supported the FACT Act. It is bipartisan, and the advancement out of committee today is important. This threat is urgent, and I look forward to the bill's swift consideration by the full Senate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there other senators
Mr.
wishing to be
Chairman.
recognized? Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to just comment on the FISH Act that passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. This is another measure in a long line of bipartisan comprehensive bills that Senator Whitehouse and I have been introducing and passing over the last several years. Our Save Our Seas Act 2.0, which was the most comprehensive ocean cleanup legislation ever passed in the Congress. President Trump has been a big supporter of these clean ocean legislation initiatives. And now we have the FISH Act, which is focused on illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, which is both a challenge globally, it's a challenge for our country, and it's certainly a challenge in Alaska. Globally, IUU fishing makes up approximately 20% of global seafood harvested catches, resulting in economic losses estimated between $10 and $23 billion to fisheries that fish legally each year. And for Alaska, IUU fishing is a growing threat. It certainly is a major factor on our very low commercial salmon harvests that we've had in the last few years. There are many reasons for a smaller salmon catch in Alaska, but one of them clearly, Mr. Chairman, is foreign IUU fishing in the North Pacific and parts of Alaska's, outside of Alaska's waters. At the same time, Mr. Chairman, the geopolitics of the North Pacific and the Arctic are changing. Russia and China are increasing their presence in and near Alaska's waters and within our EEZ. Both have expansive Arctic and North Pacific ambitions and presence, and they are some of the worst violators of IUU fishing. The Chinese in particular have their gray fleets that travel all over the world, off the coast of Africa, off the coast of Latin America, ravaging the high seas fishing stocks. They are literally a cancer on global fishing, and this bill goes after Russian and in particular Chinese fishing fleets, which, oh, by the way, use slave labor. They are real cancer. The combating CCP abuses legislation that we just passed also focuses on China's bad actions, and this bill, Mr. Chairman, builds on other legislation that's come out of this committee, particularly Senator Wicker's Maritime SAFE Act. So we think this is a very important bill. It puts IUU fishing vessels on a blacklist, raises costs for IUU vessel owners, again, mostly Chinese, and importers, and supports increased Coast Guard enforcement on the high seas to work with our partners and help some countries who are being ravaged by these IUU gray fleet Chinese fleets that, by the way, are some of the most ruinous operations for sustainable fisheries around the world. Our bill penalizes these global bad actors in fishing and, of course, supports our American fisheries, which are the most sustainable in the world. And I want to thank my colleagues, Senator Cantwell and others, on passing the Fish Act. We look forward to bringing this to the floor soon and building on bipartisan, healthy seas, oceans, and fisheries bills that we have been passing and getting signed into law over the last several years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank my friend from Alaska, and I will say in honor of his Fish Act that was expected to pass this morning, last night I had Alaskan halibut for dinner, and it was delicious.
That's not surprising, but I'm glad you are helping our economy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I ask unanimous consent that a letter from Senator Hickenlooper concerning the confirmation votes today be entered into the record without objection, so ordered. If there are no other senators wishing to be recognized, that concludes our markup for today. The executive session is adjourned.